Maybe that's how he's going to enter tonight.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's June 23rd, 2022. This is a special meeting of the Board of Directors of Council Rock School District. I would ask you all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, roll call, please. There should be several members on the phone, if you would.
Edward Tate,
Present.
Michael Thorward,
Here.
Miriam McKee,
Here.
Joseph Hidalgo,
Here.
Ed Solomon,
Here.
Mike Roosevelt,
Here.
Bob Hickey,
Here.
Yoda Pally,
Here.
and Kristen Marcel.
Here.
Yeah, she's disembarking a plane as we speak, so she might be in and out there. From there, we'll go to letter D, Solicitor Report. We have a fill-in again this evening. No Rob, no Aaron. Would you want to introduce yourself for the record? Yeah, the A team. Mr. Tate said it. Good evening. You have anything to report? No. That was rather easy. From there, we're going to go to public comment. Mr. Frederickson, there's no public comment, correct? Does anybody in the public want to speak who missed the opportunity to sign up? From there, Dr. Thorward, we're going to move up personnel actions in light of this special evening and take care of that action first.
Sure. So item F, right? I move to approve the personnel actions as contained in the attachment to this agenda.
Second is Ms. Pally. Any further comment from the board on this? Dr. Sanko, we'll go to a comment, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Joanne, welcome. I would like to inform the community and the board of some administrative team changes. I would like to address a few exciting administrative changes that are on the agenda for board consideration and approval tonight. There are 3 key roles that will be filled tonight pending your approval. These 3 professionals are exceptional educators who will bring a wide range of experiences, a strong leadership, and a demonstrated dedication to Council Rock students. These individuals understand the value of relationships with students, with staff, and our community. They are each highly qualified to assume the role for which they are being recommended. First, let me extend a warm welcome to Dr. Kyle Cantor, who, pending your approval tonight, will join Council Rock as a special education supervisor, filling in for Mrs. Becky O'Hara's role. And I'd like to congratulate Mrs. O'Hara on her retirement. Dr. Cantor comes to Council Rock via the Pottsgrove School District in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and is currently Pottsgrove Supervisor of Special Education. In the past, Kyle has logged time as the Director of Special Education and Student Services at Mass Charter School. He's been the Director of Special Education and Pupil Services in the Norristown Area School District, Supervisor of Special Education in the Delaware County Intermediate Unit, and as Associate Executive Director of Holy Family University Learning's Educational Program. Kyle is a graduate of Temple University and earned his doctorate from Arcadia University. Kyle comes with glowing recommendations from his Pottsgrove colleagues, one of whom has said, Kyle loves getting into classes and getting to know kids, teachers, and families. Welcome, Kyle. Next, I'm proud to announce that pending your approval tonight, Mr. Al Funk, currently the principal at Council Rock High School South, will be joining the Office of the Superintendent as the Director of Secondary Education. This year, Mr. Funk completed his 27th year in education. Al holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in English from Villanova University, a Master's in Education from Beaver College, now called Arcadia, and has completed his Principal's Certificate program at Penn State University. Prior to Council Rock, Al was an emotional support teacher at Central Bucks East High School. Al started in Council Rock in 2002 as an assistant principal at Council Rock North. After 5 years at North, he assumed the principalship at Council Rock South. Al has been the principal at South for the last 15 academic years. He is married to his wife, Teresa, and resides in Warrington. He is the father of 5 boys ranging in age from 26 to 17 years old. Finally, I'm pleased to also announce that pending your approval tonight, Mrs. Nicole Crawford will be joining the Office of the Superintendent as the Director of Elementary Education. Mrs. Crawford has been in education for over 25 years. She received her Bachelor in Science degree in elementary education from Westchester University and a Master's of Arts degree in educational leadership from Rowan University. Prior to becoming an administrator, Nicole was a 3rd and 4th grade teacher in the Cherry Hill School District. During this time, Nicole was also a professional development consultant for surrounding school districts in the South Jersey area. Nicole has served as an elementary principal in Council Rock for 16 years. She was the principal at Wrightstown Elementary from 2006 to 2009 and has been the principal of Goodnoe Elementary for the past 13 years. Nicole and her husband, Kevin, are the parents of 2 sons who are entering 5th and 7th grade next school year. I have known and worked with Nicole and Al as trusted colleagues and have been their direct supervisors. Between them, they have almost 40 years of experience in Council Rock. I trust them both and know that they put students first always. Welcome, Nicole and Al. These 3 administrators represent excellence in educational administration. They are evidence of Council Rock's students first always orientation, each possessing a demonstrated ability to lead, unify, and most importantly, take care of students. Council Rock is fortunate to have these professionals on our team.
Thank you, Dr. Sanko. From there, Madam Secretary, if anybody doesn't object, to have a roll call on this, please.
Mary McKee,
Yes.
Joseph Hidalgo,
Yes.
Ed Solomon,
Absolutely.
Mike Roosevelt,
Yes.
Bob Hickey,
Yes.
Yoda Pally,
Yes.
Kristen Marcel,
Yes.
Edward Tate,
Yes.
and Michael Forward.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Mr. Solomon, if I may I invite each of those three folks to the podium for a minute or two?
Please, absolutely.
Do you want to draw straws? You want to do it alphabetically?
Don't draw stalls. Please. Ladies first is always a good way of going. Matt, is there any way that microphone can be automatically set? Okay. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate and thank you, the Board of School Directors, the Council Rock community, students, staff, and families for the opportunity to stand before you this evening. As Goodnoe Elementary's principal for the past 13 years, I've enjoyed partnering with families and staff to make an outstanding school experience for our students. I feel fortunate to be in this district and now to serve in a new role, and I'm looking forward to this opportunity. I am also looking forward to our continued work and focus on students first always. I'm happy to share that my husband Kevin and our two sons, Kevin and Matthew, are joining us this evening to help support me in transitioning into this new role. Again, I thank you for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to it. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Sanko, members of the School Board of Directors. I'd like to start, are we pushing it? Oh, I have to hold it. Ah.
That's a preventative measure for us.
Test, test.
Got it fixed for you.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Okay, I'd like to start by introducing a few members of my family who could join us this evening, if I may. So I'll start with my mother-in-law, Ann Clark, who is a resident of Council Rock School District. She is also a longtime educator. She's taught all over the place, Philadelphia, Montgomery counties, but mostly Bucks County. So thank you, Mom, for being here. My oldest son, Matthew, 26 years old, he works at Morgan Stanley in Conshohocken. He was recently engaged to Rachel. Rachel could not make it this evening, but they have set a date, and we will be wed on June 16th of next year, so the countdown has begun. Very exciting times. Congratulations, Matthew. Next up, we have Albert and Michael, who are my fourth and fifth boys, my twins, and they turned 17 years of age a couple weeks ago. And as of yesterday, they are licensed drivers in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So I'm very excited about that, I think. So in between, could not join us this evening, I have a 24-year-old son, Tommy, who is a first lieutenant in the United States Army, and he is stationed down in Fort Hood, Texas. And I have a 22-year-old son, Andrew, who just graduated from Bucknell University. He's up at Penn State right now in a master's program. He's also a member of the Penn State men's basketball team, so he is enjoying summer workouts in Happy Valley. So those are my five boys. And lest I forget, the most important member of my team, married for 27 years to my wonderful wife, Teresa. And Terry is by trade a civil engineer. She works at Gilmore and Associates in New Britain, Pennsylvania. And most importantly, she puts up with my nonsense. So thank you, Terry. And last but not least, again, my colleagues and friends, dear friends in the back of the room, I thank them for their support. I thank them for being here, and they mean the world to me. They mean the world to me. So for the last 15 years of my educational journey, it has been an honor and a privilege to be the principal of Council Rock High School South. And during that time, I've been very fortunate to establish some relationships with outstanding stakeholders, community members, families, teachers, staff, and most especially students. And because of this, it is a bit bittersweet to me moving from 2002 Rockway to 30 North Chancellor Street, even though it's only 2 miles away. I am thrilled, however, about the opportunity that stands before me, and I thank the Board of Directors and Dr. Sanko for having faith and confidence in my ability to execute the responsibilities of this position. I think any time that you start a new position, it's a time of anxiety, and one of the things that I'm going to try to do to combat my anxiety as I move into this new role is to keep in the forefront our mantra of students first, always. And I think if I'm able to do that in every engagement that I have with stakeholders, everything will somehow work out okay. So I'm looking forward to it, and I will do my very best each and every day to serve Council Rock School District. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Any other comment from the board about the personnel actions that we just had? Mr. Tate, please.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. We all know Ms. Crawford and Mr. Funk very well, and I think clearly we're all excited to see them in these new positions, and have heard great things about Mr. Cantor, who went through a rigorous review process, and the feedback we've heard has been really exciting. So I think, Dr. Sanko, you made 3 terrific choices, and the board clearly supports you. And best wishes to the 3 of you.
Anybody else? Yeah, I just echo Mr. Tate. I think it's important to find career paths in an organization and have our employees, give the employees the ability to move up in the organization. So Mike and I sat on the final interviews for Al and Nicole earlier this week, and the first thing we both said and both agree is that it's great to see our people come up through the chain, if you will. I think you guys, you deserve the opportunity. I'm glad Dr. Sanko has found what he feels is the next nexus to his team and starts developing, even further down the line, because as you guys move up, there's holes created. So that probably may be the harder fit moving forward. But, my thanks for all the work that you folks have done. Mrs. Crawford, I look forward to speaking with you more often. You're on the other side of the border, so to speak, so we never really cross paths. So I'm excited about the opportunity that you're going to oversee the little kids, because, there's where it all begins. Mr. Cantor, was great talking to you before the meeting. The only thing I take away from that conversation is the the conversation. I said to Dr. Sanko, when we move forward, the question on the job description is, are you a mummer? We'd have to dig a little deeper on our applicants, but whew, mummers. No, congratulations. As I said to you in the other room, you have found a home. I want you here. You need to be here. This is what Council Rock does. It brings great people in and keeps them. We don't lose talent if we can help it, for real. Congratulations to you. You got your work cut out for you. You know the work. I wish you well, and this board's here to support these 3 personnel moves. So my congratulations to you and your families. Dad's buying ice cream tonight, Mr. Funk, right? Okay. Dr. Sego, you want to continue, or do you want to just, they can be excused for the evening? Any more comments from the board?
Not a comment, just logistics. They brought their family here. If you want pictures or anything, now would be the time. That's all.
Yeah, so come on up here and take pictures if you'd like. We'll give you a minute or two.
It's a big deal. It's fine.
She works in Holy Family. They won't let her off.
There's a lot of those.
Thank you, folks. Good night. Dr. Sanko, you want to continue?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Solomon. Just the remainder of the superintendent's report. Good evening to the board and Mr. Solomon, of course, our Council Rock community. The first thing I want to mention is our summer learning. Our teachers and students are getting ready for Summer Academy and extended school year, which will begin July 1st. I'm looking forward to getting back into the schools and interacting with the students and staff who will be participating in our summer programs. This year, the Summer Academy will take place at Holland Middle School beginning July 11th, and it will run for 3 consecutive weeks. All programs are designed and taught by Council Rock staff and are offered for students entering grades 1 through 12. Extended school year, as we know it, ESY, begins July 5th and runs through August 4th. ESY will take place at Goodnoe Elementary, Newtown Middle School, and the Star Center. I would also like to make a point of clarification. There's a point of clarification that I learned that I'd like to share. At the last board meeting, during a discussion regarding the textbook core resource in the Time of the Butterflies by Julia Alvarez, our administrator on special assignment responded to a question about whether there was a diagram of a bomb in the book. At the time, and based on her recollection, she responded that there was no diagram. Upon review, that information was inaccurate. A diagram does appear in the book. I wanted to be sure to clarify that point and to provide correct information to the board and to the public. As part of the strategic plan, we have a special education plan. The Pennsylvania Department of Education requires a special education plan as part of the district's overall comprehensive plan. This component of the comprehensive plan describes the district's commitment to ensure that a quality education will be provided to each of its students with a disability eligible for special education. The plan describes the special education programs and services that are provided by the district. The district is required to make this available for public review prior to the formal approval by the Board of School Directors. The plan will be available for review on the district website in the coming days and will be before the board for approval at the July meeting. Thank you to Dr. Chuck Lambert for his leadership in addressing this requirement from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Hillcrest Elementary School. In the next few weeks, Hillcrest Elementary will be repatriated to the renovated and refreshed facility at 420 East Holland Road. Crews will be moving equipment and boxes and furniture and supplies into the building, and we expect Hillcrest to be fully operational and ready to welcome back students, staff, and families at the start of the school year. In the coming months, our security manager and Act 44 coordinator, Mr. Bill Rick, will be retiring. As such, we have a position posted for his successor. We'd like to congratulate Bill Rick on his retirement, and as we continue to search for a security manager, I have met with area police chiefs and invited them to be part of our selection process. Their expertise is welcome and furthers our strong relationship and collaboration between the community, police, and the district. This concludes my superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Thorwart, you want to just continue down G through J, and then we'll circle up top of the agenda, if you would.
Okay, we'll bang out the other ones. Okay. Item G, I move to approve the 2022 ESY pay rates as contained in the attachment to this agenda.
Need a second, please?
Second.
Second, Mr. Hickey. Any further comments from the board on this? Any objections? All right, hearing none, I'll ask the secretary to mark that unanimous as well. H, Summer Academy.
Sure. I move to approve the 2022 Summer Academy pay rates as contained in the attachment to this agenda.
Second, please. Mrs. Pally. Any further comment from the board or objections? All right, hearing none, I'll ask the secretary to mark that unanimous as well. Continue, sir.
Sure. Item I. I move to approve the 2022 Summer Transportation pay rates as contained in the attachment to this agenda.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Pally. Anything out of the ordinary on this, Mr. Harris? Okay. Hearing any other comments or objections? All right, hearing none, I'll ask the secretary to mark that unanimous as well. J.
I move to approve the 2022 Summer Program Recommendations Addendum as contained in the attachment to this agenda.
Second.
Second.
Mrs. Pally. Any further comment from the board or objections? Hearing none, I'll ask the secretary to mark that unanimous as well. Mike, move up to number 3A, if you would, please.
Pardon me. I move to approve the 2022-2023 final general fund budget. Are we going to modify this or just,
Let's put the motion through.
okay, all right, sorry. I move to approve the 2022-2023 final general fund budget and adopt the corresponding budget resolution as attached to this agenda.
I need a second on this. Ms. Pally. Any comments from the board?
Well, there's a discussion about modification, so.
Yeah, so currently, just for the board edification and the community, this draft, or this budget that's in the agenda is for a 1.599% tax increase. Mr. Harris, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You want to make a comment, or you want to go to a roll call? Please.
Let me make a comment first. Okay.
By all means.
So I would like to propose the 1.6% increase, or 1.599, that's as stated here, because it balances our budget without dipping into our fund balance. So if we look at different economic indicators, most likely we're headed into a recession. I hope not, but this is the most likely scenario. So if this happens, both the revenue and the expense side of the balance sheet will be affected. So the revenue could decrease because of suppressed economic growth, and the expenses could increase because of inflation. So I find it fiscally responsible not to dig into our reserves, which is the fund balance, but keep them in case we need them in order to pay our employees and cover expenses in case of a recession. So the 1.6% increase is not going to allow us to go to town. It's not a kind of budget that, you know, includes our wish list, and it is not preparing us for future investments, such as a full-day kindergarten or changing the high school schedule that we had discussed in the past. So the 1.6% increase is respectful to people with fixed income because it is not a huge increase and it is well below the allowed index. So it just gives us a little bit more cushion to pay our employees and to provide good education, and this is our primary objective.
Thank you, Ms. Pally. Does anybody else want to comment? Ms. Marcel, do you want to make a comment, ma'am?
I did. First I wanted to clarify, are we about to vote on the 1.59?
That's correct, ma'am.
Will we have more discussion about what the rate actually is?
Well, my plan is to vote, to take a roll call vote on this. If it passes, then so be it. If it doesn't pass, then obviously the board's got to come back and come up with a number.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Mr. Tate, please, sir.
To clarify, we've had a lot of discussion about the budget, and it's been very helpful. I want to completely understand, since the numbers have moved as we've adjusted properly through the process. Mr. Harris, at the rate that is proposed, how does that affect our fund balance? Are we spending fund balance? Are we contributing to increasing the balance, or is this essentially flat in terms of the fund balance?
This is a fully funded budget, so there is no use of fund balance contemplated at 1.599%.
Very good. I think Mrs. Pally made, if I may, I think Mrs. Pally made some awfully good points. It's critical that we not dip into the fund balance at this point. We've talked about using fund balance. I think it's a wise thing to do in strong economic conditions. Frankly, I think at this point, most economists and economic experts are saying that we are most definitely looking at a recession, and the hope is that it won't be severe. If we avoid a recession, I'd be as happy as anybody in the world, but I think we're facing a tough year ahead. And as Mr. Solomon, I think, pointed out during a prior discussion, it may not be this year, but the following year that could be more difficult for this district financially. I think it would be wise not to dip into our fund reserve. I think we're looking at the other factor, of course, inflation. Our costs are going to continue to rise. And much of that will be beyond our control. Fortunately, our greatest expenses are fixed contractually, or hopefully will be after this evening's meeting. But it makes perfect sense to adopt this budget as proposed at a very modest tax increase. 1.6% would be far below recent years. And I think most taxpayers would be pleased with it. And I fully support the proposal in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. State. Dr. Thorpe, giving me that look. I guess you want to say that.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of numbers at the last board meeting, a lot of numbers. Dr. Sanko, does the administration have a recommendation that they're willing to share? You know, this number showed up in the agenda, but I don't know that we ever coalesced around one. I'd like to hear from your team now that, you know, you've only been in the seat a couple of weeks, but, you know, is there a number you could talk to us about?
Yeah, I would respectfully ask Mr. Harris to address that question, please.
Thanks for the hot seat, boss. So we've gone back and forth, and I just want to remind the board that the Act 1 limit is 3.4%. We opened up in May a general fund proposed final budget at 2.4%, and I came back to the board with a 2.0 a few weeks later. And I made a commitment to this board that every dollar we could find in additional revenue or cost savings that would come off of the proposed tax levy. We had some outside help come in and give us some tips on how to build some cleaner budgets. And we are now at a fully funded budget at a 1.599%. I've recommended anywhere in that range between 0.89 to 1.599. If you ask me today, and if it were the money that I was spending, I would ask for a 1.599. But knowing that this is fully in the board's hands and we're talking about livelihoods of people, my recommendation to you is that you consider passing it as is, and if not, I'm happy to go back and forth with numbers. I'm prepared to do that.
You good? Anybody else? Mr. Roosevelt, please.
Mr. Harris, could you remind me what the value of the fund balance was last year?
It's $32,910,000.
That's this year. What was it last year?
It was approximately $22 million.
So there's roughly a $10 million increase that we received that we didn't anticipate from last year to this year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Roosevelt, you started the conversation, so I got to jump in. Whether or not 1.59 passes, I would submit to this board that if we see anything like we saw last year, whose immediately overflow monies, whatever you want to call it, to $7 million last year, gets put right into the budget and goes right towards the taxpayer that may be looking at a larger increase next year. We have $7 million in this budget that was almost found, if you will. And now you're looking at taxing the taxpayer again. So I will submit that if there is money, and that's a great thing, you know, your budget can go either way. But if there's anything that comes back to this district above this budget, I sincerely hope we put that right back into the budget next year and drive that tax dollar down. Because as Mr. Tate said, I'm concerned about next year. You know, we could go to 3.4. Other districts around us are hitting that number. I think the mean, when I did the math the other day, and Mr. Roosevelt and I were on the phone, was 2.25, Mike, I think, out of most of the districts in Bucks County.
That's right.
So 1.599 fully paying for everything is one thing, but we also have to face a community that says, you know, they're struggling a little bit, and we're sitting on $32 million. So that's kind of where I sit on that too. I'd like to be below this, but I do respect where you're coming from, Mr. Harris, and I appreciate the work being done on it. Mr. Hickey.
Yeah, I'll echo those thoughts. I would prefer, and I have said from the beginning that I would prefer to be below that number. Like I said, much like last year where $8 million was suddenly in the budget, seems to be a recurring thing. And as much as we can say, oh, if it happens again this year, let's put it right into the budget and give a break to the taxpayers, that isn't always what happens. I would rather take a chance with being a little bit short. I mean, obviously, you'd like to hit that number right on the button where there's no fund balance and there's no deficit. But in this particular case, I would rather not have a fund balance since history has shown that we keep on just increasing it. Like I said, I would prefer to be a little bit below that number. It's a little too high for me, and I won't go for 1.6%. It's going to have to be a lot lower.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. Mr. Eldago, you're on the phone, sir.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask Mr. Harris how we were looking this year from a surplus or deficit, where we're, if you can estimate, because I guess the year ends in about a week or something. So
to hedge a bet, there are a few receivables that we're waiting on from the state that we're going to have to book in the next quarter coming back. But to date, we've received $242 million in revenue of the $248 million that's contemplated. That does include the additional the additional money from basic ed and special ed, as well as the influx of EIT, about $3 million more than planned, as well as $1 million in tax, real estate tax that we budgeted for, and the budget came in stronger. So just in those dollars, we're about $4 million up from plan on that revenue. And as far as expenses are concerned, we're carefully monitoring the bills that are coming in right now, but we're looking to not dip into the budgetary reserve that the board had built into the budget last year. And we used about half of it on some technology and some contractual help. So we have about $600,000 left in that line item. So I would anticipate that we would have some type of a surplus next year once the books were closed.
Oh.
I couldn't give you an exact dollar amount, but I think it's going to be to the good this year.
Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. So this year we may end up to the good again. And I wouldn't say that we have a history of our fund balance growing. We've seen it go to 22 million last year, and that was getting in a nervous area. So we had a windfall last year, and we'll stay steady this year. I guess my only comment is more for the board. My own personal feeling is I'm looking to get a unanimous consensus on a number today. I'd like to all coalesce around a budgeting. Some members want higher, some may want lower, but let's get to a point where we can have a unanimous consensus, because I have my own protest nay vote in my head because of the process, the way things went before the budget season. I would have liked to have seen all contract negotiations done during the budget season. I think it's a lot of work, but that's when we can put all the pieces together under the table. Because you know where you're going to make money is in a negotiation. That's where we might have to look at restructuring and doing things outside the box, especially with the way things are going in the economy. So that was my 2 cents I wanted to say, and I hope again that we can get as close to unanimous on a consensus. Thank you.
Joe, if you would, I'm trying to keep score of this. Are you a yay or nay for the current, without the vote, without an official vote? Are you leaning towards 1.599, or would you like to hear something else?
Yeah, I think we can afford to go lower.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Mrs. Marceau, are you still on the phone? Did you want to comment, just so you're not losing traction here?
So as I've mentioned in some of our previous meetings, you know, in the last several weeks, I'm worried about how tax increases will force them to have to potentially move out of our community because they can't afford to pay more. I've heard from parents recently that are changing their driving habits because of high gas prices and foregoing family vacations this summer. I've also heard from some local businesses that their margins are being squeezed even more from labor issues, inflation, supply chain bottlenecks, et cetera. And it's just really making it harder for people. That's really what I've been hearing over the last, few weeks and more. And so in this time of inflation and with available surpluses that we have, specifically the Future Education Initiatives Fund, I believe now is not the time to pass a tax increase at this number. I support something that is lower. So at this time, I will not support the 1.59. I would like to be below that. Thank you.
Mrs. McGann, you're in deep thought. I'm just trying to keep score, ma'am. Thank you.
For the reasons previously stated, I would be comfortable with the motion as stated.
Thank you. Sure, please.
I just want to clarify. So I understand what you said or what you're saying in terms of like not increasing taxes if we don't have to. But my main concern is that if there is a recession, it's not going to be so much the expense side because that is kind of contracted already for the next year or the next couple of years. It's the revenue side. That could decrease much more than we anticipate. And it's not that we found whatever extra $9 or $10 million and we were sitting on it, because the fund balance is less than 10% of the budget, which is acceptable. And it is a good cushion to have in case things go badly. Also, having a healthy fund balance could increase our credit rating, and that means that if we borrow money for, say, building schools or other things, we would have very favorable terms, and that it would cost less to borrow money. So I do not like to pay taxes. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but we have to. And in this case, if it was not a recession most likely to happen, I would definitely not push for the 1.599. But again, based on my understanding of the economy, I think that would be the most prudent financial decision. But I totally respect people's opinions about that.
Thank you, ma'am. Mike, you have anything else?
Not at this time. I think we're going to raise taxes. I'm not convinced this is the number. So, I want to talk about it some more. But we have a motion on the table.
Yeah, we're going to go to a roll call now then. Have a roll call, Madam Secretary.
Joseph Hidalgo,
No.
Ed Solomon,
No.
Mike Roosevelt,
No.
Bob Hickey,
No.
Yoda Pally,
Yes.
Kristen Marcel,
No.
Edward Tate,
Yes.
Michael Thorward,
No.
and Miriam McKee.
Yes.
Motion is denied, 6-9 to 6-3, I'm sorry. All right, folks, here we go to work now. I just have a question maybe to set the table, Mr. Harris, if you would. Walk me through percentages down from 1.599, and I think this is a fair question, and please, anybody else jump in. How much fund balance would need to be used to close it? So if we go down to 1%, how much fund balance? To 1.25, I don't think anybody on this board, and I can't speak for everybody, we're not going to go below 1. And we're sure as heck not going anywhere near 0. That's just my opinion. So can you give me an idea what fund balance if we go down to the 1.25 or 1.0?
Start with 1.0. 1% tax increase yields an estimated fund balance of $1 million.
Again?
1.0 tax increase yields a estimated fund balance use of $1 million.
You use $1 million.
Correct. Correct. 1.25 is $590,000.
So let me just so while he's still busy doing that, I think, my opinion, I'm only one, that's a couple options that gets us somewhere there. I guess we could go 1.35. I mean, you know, we could keep nickel and diming this. But I saw some hands, and let me defer to the hands after those comments. Mr. Hickey, please.
You just said a few minutes ago that we had not a fund balance, like an educational fund balance of 1.2 million that we haven't used.
So the district, the board at the end of last year reallocated some of the fund balance to committed fund balances. $14 million was to the COVID-19 recovery. $4 million was for educational initiatives.
No. There was a figure of 1.2 million that you said that we allocate towards
Budgetary reserve.
budgetary reserve.
Yes.
And how much of it have we used?
Approximately $600,000.
So we have 600,000 left as of today.
Yes. So what would happen in that case? All the accounts would be deleted or shaken out, and everything would go to the bottom right. So depending on how much revenue we get, how much expenses based on that revenue, then that delta, similar to what happened last year, if the revenues are higher and the expenses are lower, then you would have a larger fund balance increase.
Right, but as I look at this, I see 1.25 tax increase, we would need to borrow $590,000. Wouldn't that $600,000 that is now left cover that expense? So we wouldn't even be dipping into fund balance?
In theory, yes. Assuming that the board collected to plan its revenue budget and spent to plan minus that $600,000 in the expense budget.
Thanks. And I appreciate all the work that, has been done over the last few months.
And I'm not trying to muddy the water here, but you have an expense budget that you either meet or beat, and you have a revenue budget that you either meet or beat. And when you beat the revenue budget, then the fund balance goes up, but it can be quickly taken away if the expense budget if you overexpend in your expense budget.
Historically, do you know whether we've been exceeding or not meeting our revenue expense and expenses?
Could you
Over the last few years,
can
like,
give
have
you-
our expenses been higher than expected and our revenues been lower, or have our revenues been lower than expected and our expenses been higher?
Can you give me a few minutes, talk quietly amongst yourselves? I'm happy to get you that number.
Thank you.
Any other questions amongst the board while Mr. Harris is doing that?
My computer has the spinning ball of death. So in the 2 years prior to the last year, we were at $600,000 to the good, $700,000 to the good. And then prior to that, there was a dip into the fund balance, about $1.2 million. I'll get, once it comes up, I'll, if you don't mind, I'll interrupt and.
Please do, sir. Thank you. Mr. Roosevelt.
Another quick question on this line. Mr. Harris, does our new budget contemplate a reserve fund effectively replenishing whatever wouldn't be used, or does this always just keep growing?
So, yes, this budget does contemplate a $1.2 million budgetary reserve. And that's something that's historically been built into budgets in the past. Because you have such a large cost area, there are things, if you have to add staff, those budgetary transfers can be made without going back to the board to ask to reopen the budget, which would be a completely different ball of wax from a legal standpoint.
And if we were to not spend it effectively, would it become 1.8? And if we were to spend it from last year, would we still have our 1.2?
That's a tricky question because it's like a match. When you light the match on July 1 for your general fund budget, and June 30th, the match goes out. Whatever's left over goes into fund balance. So theoretically, yes, but the way the accounting principles move, those dollars shake out to the right because they're no longer allocated because the time has expired on the allocation legally.
But we have a contemplation of a 1.2, which the administration feels comfortable with.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else? So, Mike, what did you say? I mean, are you throwing numbers out there, or are you just going back and forth? I mean, for me, Jason, I appreciate you getting back to me super quick with my results. I mean, using $1 million for me at 1.0% tax increase, using $1 million of fund balance in a normal year, there would be people whispering in my ear, you don't do that, you don't use fund balance. But knowing we took $7 million off the tax base last year, we're in the midst starting a recession. It's a sign of good faith to use $1 million that we captured last year out of the 7 to give it back to the taxpayer, keep it at a 1%. You indicated earlier that you assume that our numbers, and you think our numbers are going to come in even higher. I think consistency, Mr. Tate has said this, consistent raises of taxes over the next couple of years would give the taxpayer a strong will and a goodwill from the district. So I'm ready to vote on a 1%. I can have the conversation to use 590 at 1.25. My concern is looking the taxpayer in the face, and I respect Mrs. Pally saying, don't use it. But we took $7 million, we found $7 million last year. And as I said already, if that happens again next year, I'd like to work that right into a tax, the next tax thing. So I can start at 1%, and I'd be very happy taking $1 million. Dr. Thorwart.
If I may, 2 years ago, we had a windfall too. It was the result of staff give-backs. I tried to give it back to the staff, but we spent it. So we were in the same boat then. We sat on money that, I like you, Mr. Salomon, 1.6 seems high. I mean, if at one point we talked about 0.89, that's fine. I mean, I said no to talk about this. I'm glad we're talking about this. If we can coalesce around 1 or 1.25, I think that's threading the needle a little better than just, I don't think 0 is in our best interest. So, if you're making a motion at 1, I can vote for that. So
the only other caveat I would add, and I think Mr. Hickey would jump right in and agree with me, Dr. Sanko, I would seriously insist that this district engages in a curriculum and expense review that I've been asking for, and obviously things get in the way. But I think that's got to be part of this package for me. That we find some areas that we can do better, and maybe we won't. But I think we owe it to the taxpayer. When we throw numbers around, we owe it to those folks that pay taxes that we're doing due diligence on the back end. So for me, that's got to be a part of a side conversation of obviously, but not, it's not part of this motion, but I think that has to happen in your administration. I would look forward to hearing your thoughts.
I wasn't sure if you wanted my thoughts now or.
Always want your thoughts, Dr. Sanka.
So when we started this journey, we talked about looking at programs and looking at departments and doing program reviews. So I would suggest that I heard that loud and clear. And as soon as we can get people in place like you helped us do this evening, the first spot we will start will be in our business office to do a line-by-line look at what it is we do and if we can find things that we can improve upon. And if not, we'll share whatever we learn.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Salmon, I have those answers.
Please, Mr. Harris.
In the 2021 actuals, it was a $9.9 million variance. In the 1920 year, it was a $702,000 variance to the good. 1819, $880,000 to the good. 1718, $2.7 million in the negative. 2016, 17, $940,000 in the negative. 2015, 16, $4.5 million in the negative. And the record I have back to 14, 15, $517,000 to the positive. So 517 to the good, 4.5 to the negative, 940 to the negative, 2.7 to the negative. That's 3 years in a row. And then 19, 20, 21, 880 to the good, 702 to the good, 9.9 million to the good.
That's not fund balance,
That's net operating result.
okay. So I didn't know if that's what you asked for, if you asked for the fund balance has moved up.
Sorry, what was the 1920 was?
1920, it was a $702,000. The fund balance starting in 2015, 29 million, went to 25 million, went to 24 million, to 21.3, 22.2 million, 22.9, up to 32,910,000.
And can I say something, or you were like?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Finish your thought. Absolutely.
So the 9.1 million that we found, I think we didn't really find it. I mean, if you look around, you see that all the tax revenues have increased dramatically because the income during COVID was much higher than anticipated. So it is part of the revenue side being higher, and it's going to go the other way during a recession. As you see, there were years that we were negative in the millions. So it's possible that we're going to go into that direction. So I just tend to worry about things like that, about how the economy moves, and if you want to have a unanimous vote, I think I would compromise at the 1.25 at this point. I really don't want to go less than that. I mean, I'm really worried about the trends, and it's not, I mean, these are not big numbers anyway. I just want to share my thoughts.
Okay. So I'll keep square. I got one at 1.25.
You can make that 2, Mr. Salmon.
2, Mrs. McKee, that was great. 3, Mr. Tate. Mr. Roosevelt.
I'll come in at 1.25 as well.
Thank you. Let me just go to the phones, clear the phones out. Mr. Odago, your thoughts on a 1.25, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Harris, using $590,000 of fund balance.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Solomon. I think we should look at this as like a 2-year process. So at the end of next year, depending on how we go, that's going to be where we will either go a little higher than we would like or a little bit lower next year. So I think we're in the range between 1 and 1.25. That's pretty reasonable historically. And if we overshoot, we'll adjust next year. So I think I'm hearing some consensus around the 1.25, and I heard Mr. Roosevelt say that too. So that's a positive trend. Let's keep it going.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hickey.
I can go for 1.25.
Mrs. Marcel? Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I would like to be lower than 1.25. I spoke last week about the Future Educational Initiatives Fund and how last fall, through Mr. Bialik, there were a number of discussions made about putting aside that $4 million for future educational initiatives. And I don't want to use all of it, or putting forth the fifth special, the STEAM special, which is something that everyone is very supportive, and I'm really happy that we're moving forward with that. But I do think it makes sense to use some of that money to offset just starting that program and giving taxpayers a lower number for this year. And so so I'm a no on 1.25. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Thorpe.
Keeping score.
I'm at 6, so I mean, we could call a roll call.
It's okay. I was leaning towards 1. Then I heard the arguments, and we just asked Dr. Sanko to do a bottom to the top review of all his programs. You're gonna have to hire somebody to do that. So yeah, I can vote. Again, I voted no the first time, so we would talk this through, not just, so, yeah.
All right, Madam Secretary, roll call, please. Oh, okay, the motion shot down. Dr. Thorwart, you want to write this on the fly, please? Thank you.
Sure. Do you want to write it for me, or do you want me to just do it on the fly? I can probably do this on the fly if you'd like. You will correct me if I'm wrong before somebody seconds it. I move to approve the 2022-2023 final general fund balance reflecting a 1.25% tax increase as discussed in this board meeting. Together with all the other items in the corresponding budget resolution attached to this agenda.
So nothing changes in the agenda except the difference in tax increase. Okay.
One small nit, sir. The value by millage, based on that, the homestead reduction will still be $354.77, but we did a sliding scale. It goes from the actual deduct on the property would go from 2629 to 2638.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Second.
Second, Mr. Roosevelt. Good.
Yeah, not to pick at nits, but I think what we're talking about is a 1.25% in the real estate tax.
Correct.
The other two taxes included in our budget remain at 1%, correct? The EIT and the real estate transfer tax?
That is correct.
Okay.
Everything else
I think they exceed our authority.
Yeah.
Actually, so.
I know. I'm just making that clarification.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We good? Are you good, man? Okay. Roll call, please.
Joseph Hidalgo,
Yes.
Kristen Marcel,
No.
Miriam McKee,
Yes.
Yoda Pally,
Yes.
Michael Roosevelt,
Yes.
Ed Tate,
Yes.
Michael Thorwart,
Yes.
Ed Solomon,
Yes.
and Bob Hickey.
Yes.
Motion passed 8-1. We have a budget, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Appreciate the work, Mr. Harris, your team.
Thank you.
Bob Reinhardt, the board putting many hours in. Mike, you want to continue and get us through the rest of the night, please?
Sure, I can take care of this. I move to approve the Synopsys Software as a Service 3-year subscription agreement at $7,500 per year, which reflects a no increase.
Have a second. Mrs. Pally with a second. Any comment from the board on this? Any objections? Hearing none, I'm going to ask the secretary to mark that unanimous. Continue, Mike, please.
I move to approve the Horizon Food Service software subscription, subject to audit.
Second, please.
Second.
Ms. Pally. Any comment from the board or any objections? Hearing none, I'll ask the secretary to mark that unanimous, please.
Moving on. I move to approve the resolution for authorized electronic signer for Pennsylvania Department of Education as attached to this agenda.
Second.
Second, Mr. Roosevelt. Any comment or objection from the board?
This is
It's like Jeopardy right now,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, but
All right, hearing none, I'll ask the secretary to mark that unanimous consent. All right, you guys ready now for E?
I've got it. I move to approve the July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2026 agreement between the Council Rock Education Professional Support Association and the Council Rock School District as contained in the attachment to this agenda.
Second.
Ms. Pally won that one, sorry. Dr. Senko, you have any comments on this before we?
I would just like to congratulate and thank Mrs. Taylor, the executive board for CRESPA, and Mr. Harris for their work on this. I know that we had a really good working relationship in moving forward, and there were some bridges to cross at the end, and thankfully to the group of folks that worked on it, we're in a good spot.
Yeah, well-deserved contract for our support staff. Many years of service for many of them. It's nice to have another contract locked in, and from Mr. Harris's point of view, we can concentrate on other things and knowing that we have a good contract in place. My congratulations, the board's congratulations to the CRESPA team and their group, and Ms. Taylor and your team, and Mark Fitzgerald and everybody. So congratulations to them. Anybody else? How about a roll call, please?
Edward Tate,
Yes.
Michael Thorward,
Yes.
Mary McKee,
Yes.
Joe Hidalgo,
Yes.
Ed Solomon,
Yes.
Mike Roosevelt,
Yes.
Bob Hickey,
Yes.
Yoda Pally,
Yes.
and Krista Marcel.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0. Congratulations. From there, we're going to move. I think you're done, right, Dr. Thorwart? You are.
I've hit everything.
Yep.
Yes.
From there, we move to second set of public comment. Anybody in the audience with a comment? Just state your name and township you're from. Please, good evening.
Misty Laflery, Newtown Township. Just a question for those of you who voted for a 1.6% tax increase. To those of you on the board who indicated that this type of increase would not be a harmful burden to the community, and in particular to those on fixed incomes, I wonder whether there is a sense on the board what the median average fixed income is in our district and what the actual dollar amount would be at that rate of a fixed income tax increase, what that would be per household. I'd love to hear a number on that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else in the audience? Any new board business? Mr. Tate, how was the golf outing? You want to give a couple comments on that since we're here?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Solomon. The outing went well. We were blessed with great weather. We had a great turnout. And in addition to the money raised to support, you know, we made this point, I think, very effectively, that CREF raises money that goes directly into the classroom. It doesn't go anywhere else. It doesn't support athletic programs or anything else other than what's directly happening in the classroom, and I think that's pretty neat. We raised a good amount of money. We had some very generous sponsors, including our legal counsel and other supporters of this district. And it, I think, is also a great esprit de corps building kind of event. It brings people in to meet Council Rock teachers and administrators, and all in all, it was a great event. Next year, it will be held at Jericho National here in the district, and we've already begun planning for that. So as soon as we have a date, we'll let you know. But thank you. It was a great success.
Great, Mr. Tate, thanks. Any further new business or old business from the board? All right, hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.